I want to start today with a story that is uh, so ingrained in our culture that it's basically an idiom.
Mhm.
You hear it in boardrooms, political speeches, probably from that one uncle who loves giving life advice,
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's the fable of the boiling frog.
the boiling frog. It's the ultimate cautionary tale, isn't it?
It really is. It's the mascot for business consultants everywhere.
It is. And the premise for, the three people on Earth who haven't heard it is pretty simple.
Right, you drop a frog in a pot of boiling water.
And it screams, or whatever frogs do, and it jumps right out.
Right.
Pure survival instinct.
Shit.
But if you put that same frog in a pot of, say, tepid, comfortable water, and you slowly, gradually turn up the heat.
It doesn't notice. It just kind of gets comfortable, creates a new normal for itself.
Exactly. And by the time the water is actually boiling, it's just too late.
The frog is boiled alive because it failed to recognize that slow, creeping change in its environment.
It's an incredibly powerful metaphor. We use it all the time to warn people about complacency.
Yeah, about the dangers in their lives that sneak up on them. We use it to explain why companies go bankrupt or why people stay in toxic relationships for years.
Or even huge, slow-moving threats like climate change.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great metaphor.
Hmm.
But I have some bad news.
Oh.
I guess good news for the frogs. As we kick off this deep dive into Adam Grant's Think, again, we have to destroy this myth right away.
Okay.
It is complete biological nonsense.
That's right. If you actually try this, and please, for the love of science, nobody try this at home.
Please don't.
But if you were to put a frog in a pot and start heating it up, it doesn't just sit there meditating on its impending doom.
So wait, the frog doesn't just accept this fate.
Not at all. Frogs are cold-blooded, yeah, but they aren't stupid. They have this biological imperative to regulate their body temperature.
So as soon as it gets a little uncomfortable.
As soon as the water gets uncomfortably warm, the frog's brain goes, hey, this isn't right, and it jumps out.
So the frog is actually way smarter than the fable gives it credit for.
Yeah, much smarter. The frog has a feedback loop. It feels discomfort, it reassesses the situation, and then it takes action.
Which brings us to the big twist that kicks off this whole discussion. Adam Grant argues that the frogs, they aren't the stupid ones in this story.
Oh.
We are.
That is the uncomfortable truth at the heart of what we're talking about today. The fable is a complete lie about frogs, but it is a perfect, and I mean perfect, description of human psychology.
So humans are the ones who fail to reassess.
We are the ones who fail to reassess when the changes happen slowly, when a career starts to decline or a marriage slowly cracks or a business model becomes obsolete. We don't jump, we rationalize.
We sit in the pot and we tell ourselves, this actually feels kind of like a hot spring. It's great for the pores.
I'm sure it'll cool down eventually.
Exactly. We prefer the comfort of our old beliefs over the discomfort of having to change our minds.
We just ignore the heat. Because acknowledging it would mean we have to do something really difficult. We have to rethink.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're looking at Adam Grant's Think again. And this isn't just a book about thinking. It's about the psychology of flexibility.
Right.
Our mission today is to explore why we cling so tightly to old beliefs, why really smart people with high IQs, are often the worst at changing their minds, and how we can all master this art of unlearning before we get boiled alive.
And we have some incredible territory to cover. We're going from tragic forest fires to the boardroom battles of the smartphone wars. But it all starts with understanding the danger of holding on.
Right. And to illustrate just how deadly holding on can be, we have to go back to 1949, Mann Gulch, Montana. And this story, it's heavy.
It is. It's one of the most studied disasters in firefighting history. It's a tragic story, but it's just foundational to understanding how our minds work or, fail to work under extreme pressure.
So let's set the scene. It's a sweltering August day. You have a team of smoke jumpers.
And these aren't your average firefighters.
No, these are the elite, the special forces. They parachute out of planes directly into the wilderness to kill wildfires before they can spread.
And the foreman is a guy named Wagner Dodge.
Right. And almost immediately the mission just goes wrong. They land thinking this is a routine 10 o'clock fire.
Meaning they'll have it contained by 10 a.m. the next day. Simple job.
But the wind shifts, the heat rises, and suddenly the fire jumps the gulch.
So these elite firefighters are no longer hunting the fire.
The fire is hunting them.
Wow.
It's a terrifying image. They are sprinting up a steep slope, I think it was about a 76-degree incline,
Incredibly steep.
through this tall, dry grass. And the fire's just roaring behind them, like a freight train, moving faster than a human can run.
So they're literally racing death uphill.
They are. And then Ragnar Dodge does something that, to his men, must have looked like absolute insanity.
He stops running.
He stops running. Imagine being one of his crew. You are panicking, your heart is pounding, the heat is blistering your skin, and your boss just stops, takes out a match.
And lights the grass on fire right in front of him.
I mean,
They must have thought he completely snapped under the pressure. One of the men actually yelled out, "To hell with that, I'm getting out of here," and just ran right past him up the ridge.
but Dodge wasn't crazy. He was doing something incredibly sophisticated. He was creating an escape fire.
Right. He burned the fuel in front of him.
Then he laid down in the smoldering ashes, covered his face with a wet handkerchief, and just let the main fire roar right around him.
Because there was no grass left to burn where he was laying. He survived.
It was a stroke of genius. He managed to overcome what Grant calls the first instinct fallacy.
In a crisis, our primal instinct is to run from fire or to try to extinguish fire. Those are the trained responses.
But Dodge didn't rely on his training. He looked at the situation, he realized the old rules just didn't apply, and he rethought the entire scenario in seconds.
He fought fire with fire.
But the tragedy is, most of his crew did not. 13 men died that day. They were overtaken by the flames.
And this is where the lesson gets really, really difficult. When the Forest Service investigators went up that hill later to recover the bodies and piece together what happened,
What did they find?
they found their tools scattered along the path where they were running.
You mean their axes and their shovels?
Yes, but think about the context here. These men were running for their lives. Every single ounce of weight mattered.
And yet,
Many of them were still carrying heavy chainsaws, shovels, backpacks. We're talking 20 to 40 pounds of gear almost until the very end.
that seems, it's almost impossible to believe. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you just drop everything and run? If I'm being chased by a bear, I'm dropping my sandwich.
Exactly. If you're being chased by fire, you drop the chainsaw.
It seems so logical to us sitting here in a studio.
But Grant argues this wasn't just a physical mistake, it was a psychological one. It's what we call the identity trap.
How so?
Well, think about who these men were. They were smoke jumpers. A smoke jumper isn't just a person who puts out fires. Their entire identity is tied to those tools.
So without a Pulaski axe, without a shovel,
Who are you? You're just a guy running in the woods. In that moment of panic, their brains reverted to their training and their identity. I am a firefighter. Firefighters hold their tools.
so the physical weight was heavy, but the psychological weight of dropping the tools, that was even heavier.
It was. Dropping the tools meant admitting that they weren't fighting the fire anymore. They were fleeing. It meant admitting a total loss of control.
And that is the metaphor for all of us.
Precisely. We aren't running from wildfires, usually, but we are running from obsolescence or market changes or complex life problems. And we are all running uphill carrying these heavy tools.
Old beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
Old strategies that used to work for us.
Yeah,
Biases we've held for years.
exactly. Someone yells at us, "Hey, the market has changed. Drop that outdated strategy." And we scream back, "I can't. This strategy is who I am. This is how I built my career."
We cling to the tools that make us feel competent, even when they're the very things slowing us down.
And that refusal to drop the tools, that refusal to rethink our own identity, is often what slows us down enough for the fire to catch us.
So the big question is, how do we learn to drop the tools? What is happening in our brains that makes us grip them so tightly?
Adam Grant identifies 3 specific modes of thinking that act like a kind of mental superglue. He calls them the 3 Stooges of the mind.
I love these labels because they're so instantly recognizable. The preacher, the prosecutor, and the politician.
Yeah.
I have to admit, reading this section was a bit of a roast for me.
Yeah.
I saw myself in all 3 at different times.
Oh, me too. Absolutely.
Let's break them down so the listener can, self-diagnose. First up, the preacher.
The preacher mode is triggered when our sacred beliefs are questioned. And this doesn't have to be religion.
Right.
It could be your belief in the paleo diet, or that Android is better than iPhone, or your political affiliation. When someone challenges that belief, you don't evaluate the evidence. You deliver a sermon.
You're not trying to find the truth. You're just trying to protect the faith. You ignore any evidence to the contrary because it's heresy.
Exactly. You are preaching to the choir, and you're trying to excommunicate the non-believers.
Okay, so that's the preacher. Then there's the prosecutor.
Ah, the prosecutor. This mode triggers when we see a flaw in someone else's reasoning.
This is the default mode of social media.
It really is.
Yeah.
The prosecutor is that person who spots a typo in your argument and then decides your entire worldview is invalid.
Yes.
You become a lawyer, you latch onto a tiny inconsistency, a minor logical slip, and you attack. You say, huh, you claim to care about the environment, but you flew on a plane once. Argument destroyed.
The goal there isn't to learn or even to persuade, really. It's just to win.
It's to prove I'm right and you're an idiot.
Okay, and finally, the politician. This one is a little more subtle, but just as dangerous.
This is triggered when we want people to like us.
This is the chameleon.
Yes. The politician doesn't care about truth, like the preacher, or winning, like the prosecutor. The politician cares about approval.
So if you're at a dinner party with liberals, you talk about climate change. If you're at a dinner with conservatives, you talk about tax cuts.
You're just lobbying for votes.
So we have the preacher defending the faith, the prosecutor attacking the enemy, and the politician kissing babies. What do these three have in common? Why are they such huge barriers to thinking?
Well, the fatal flaw in all three is that they operate on the assumption that we already know the truth. The preacher thinks he possesses the truth. The prosecutor thinks the other guy has the error. The politician thinks the truth is irrelevant compared to popularity. None of them are looking for new information. They've stopped learning.
So if those are the traps, what's the antidote? What is the mode we should be aiming for?
Grant calls it scientist mode.
Now, I want to clarify something here, because when I hear scientist, I think of a lab coat, or I think of someone who is, cold and detached, or just uses big words.
No, it's not about your profession. It's a mindset. Being in scientist mode means you refuse to let your ideas become your identity.
So you treat your opinions as, what, hypotheses, not truths.
Okay, exactly. Instead of saying, this is the way the world works, you say, this is how I think the world works. Let's see if I'm right.
Okay.
And here's the crucial difference. When a scientist sees data that contradicts their theory, they don't get offended. They don't preach or prosecute. They get curious.
They say interesting.
They say interesting. They ask, where am I wrong? Instead of, why am I right?
That seems incredibly hard to do in practice, especially when you've built your career or your whole reputation on being right.
It is hard, but the cost of not doing it is catastrophic. And we have a perfect case study for this.
BlackBerry versus Apple.
The battle of the smartphones.
This is the ultimate tragedy of the preacher mode.
Yeah.
But before we, dunk on BlackBerry, we have to remember something important. Michael Zaitis, the founder of BlackBerry, was a genius.
Absolutely. A titan. He started as a scientist. He challenged the conventional wisdom of the 90s that said you couldn't put a computer in someone's pocket. He invented the thumb typing keyboard. He literally changed the way the world communicated.
I remember my first BlackBerry, the Crackberry. I loved that thing. That little clicky keyboard was so satisfying. It was a status symbol.
And that keyboard, that became his heavy tool. It was the source of his success. But then 2007 happens.
Steve Jobs walks on stage with the iPhone.
Just a glass screen, no keyboard.
And this is where Lazaridis' brain just crashed. Instead of staying in scientist mode and asking, wow, how does that work? Is this a better way? He shifted gears.
He went right through the cycle of the Three Stooges. First, the preacher. He preached the gospel of the keyboard. He said, keyboards are the only true path. People need to feel the click. Typing on glass is ridiculous.
Then he went straight into prosecutor mode.
He attacked the iPhone. He said, the battery life is terrible. The screen will shatter. It's a toy. No serious business person will ever use this. He focused on all the flaws to dismiss the threat.
And he also played the politician.
This is the part that tricks people. He looked at his current users, his voters, who loved the clicky keys. He asked them, do you want a touchscreen? And they all said,
no, we love the keyboard.
Right. So he didn't want to offend his base. He kept giving them exactly what they said they wanted.
Which sounds like good business advice. Listen to your customer.
It is, until the customer is wrong about what they're going to want tomorrow. He held onto his heavy tools, the keyboard, until the market just moved on and BlackBerry went from owning, 50% of the market to less than 1%.
Okay, now compare that to Steve Jobs. There's this myth that Jobs was just inherently smarter, or this visionary who saw the future perfectly.
That he looked into a crystal ball and saw the iPhone.
Yeah, but that's not what happened.
No, not at all. The sources mention that Jobs actually hated the idea of making a phone at first.
Really?
Yes, he thought mobile phones were ugly, they were complicated, they were for pocket protector types. He was very resistant. He didn't want to dilute the Apple brand.
So how did the iPhone happen?
His team knew how to handle him. They didn't argue with him because that would just trigger his prosecutor mode.
Do what they do.
They triggered his scientist mode. They built a prototype. They just put the technology in his hands.
They let the data do the talking.
Exactly. When Jobs played with the interface, the scrolling, the glass screen, he looked at the actual experience and he pivoted. He was willing to rethink his position based on new evidence. He didn't let his previous statement, "I hate phones," define his future.
And that ability to pivot is literally worth money.
Yeah.
There's a study you mentioned about entrepreneurs that put a dollar figure on this exact mindset.
The $12,000 experiment. Researchers in Italy took over 100 startup founders and split them into two groups.
Okay.
Both groups got general business training, but one group got an extra module on scientific thinking.
What exactly did they teach them?
They taught them to view their business plan not as a roadmap, but as a hypothesis. They taught them to view their product launch not as a grand opening, but as an experiment.
And what happened?
Over the next year, the scientist group made 40 times more revenue than the control group.
40 times. That's incredible.
40 times. Because when they hit a wall, they didn't just preach harder, they pivoted. They walked away from failing strategies earlier. They dropped their tools.
Wow. So clinging to your guns isn't just stubbornness. It's actually bad for business. But let's move from the billionaires to the rest of us. Because sometimes the problem isn't that we're stubborn experts like Lazarides. Sometimes the problem is we think we're experts when we have no idea what we're doing.
Welcome to Mount Stupid.
I love this term, Mount Stupid. Paint the picture for us.
So this comes from the Dunning-Kruger effect, which a lot of people have heard of. Imagine a graph. The vertical axis is confidence, how much you think you know.
Got it.
The horizontal axis is competence, how much you actually know.
Okay, I'm with you.
When you learn just a tiny bit about a subject, maybe you watch one YouTube video on macroeconomics or read one article on epidemiology.
Your confidence just rockets to the absolute peak of the graph.
Yeah.
You feel like a genius.
But your actual competence is still basically zero.
Right.
That peak high confidence, low competence, that is Mount Stupid. You feel like you know more than the doctors or the generals or the financial advisors. The defining trait of being on Mount Stupid is that you don't know what you don't know.
It reminds me of that statistic where like 93% of American drivers believe their driving skills are above average.
Exactly. Mathematically impossible, but psychologically very real. The enemy of intelligence isn't ignorance. Ignorance is curable, you just learn something. The enemy is the illusion of knowledge. If you think you already know, you can't learn.
Okay, so what happens when you finally fall off Mount Stupid?
Well, as you learn a bit more, you realize, oh wow, this is actually really complicated. And your confidence just crashes. You tumble down into the valley of despair.
This is where you realize I know nothing. I'm a fraud. This is imposter syndrome. Now, we usually hear that imposter syndrome is a bad thing, that we need to cure it, we need to fake it till we make it. But Adam Grant flips this, right?
He does. He argues that imposter syndrome can actually be a superpower if you use it correctly.
How can feeling like a complete fraud possibly be a superpower?
Look at Halla Tomasdóttir. She was a candidate for the presidency of Iceland. When she was first asked to run, she had a severe case of imposter syndrome.
She felt unqualified.
Totally. She said, I have no experience. I'm not a politician. I'm not qualified. Why would anyone vote for me?
Most people would say, okay, then don't run.
But she ran anyway. And because she felt like she didn't know enough, she didn't preach, she went into scientist mode, she worked frantically to learn, she listened to voters because she didn't assume she knew what they wanted. Her humility made her work harder.
You have to contrast that with her main opponent.
David Odson, a former prime minister and central bank governor. He was a permanent resident of Mount Stupid.
He was overconfident.
So confident he knew economics that he presided over the banking collapse that nearly bankrupted the entire country in 2008. He had total confidence and, well, very low competence in that new environment.
So Halla had low confidence, but a high willingness to learn.
And that is the golden formula for rethinking. It's not about having zero confidence. It's called confident humility.
What does that balance actually look like?
Well, arrogance is believing your current knowledge is perfect. Humility, in the bad sense, is not believing in yourself at all. Confident humility is having faith in your ability to learn while questioning if your current knowledge is complete.
So it's saying, I don't know the answer yet, but I am confident I can figure it out.
Exactly. It's holding your head up high while you're checking your footing.
Okay, so we've covered how to think for ourselves, but we don't live in a vacuum. We have to interact with other people. We have to argue with that uncle at Thanksgiving who loves the boiling frog story.
We have to debate colleagues, and honestly, most of us are terrible at it. We just make things worse. We turn disagreements into wars.
Right. Grant talks about the difference between good conflict and bad conflict.
Yeah, psychologists distinguish between relationship conflict and task conflict.
Relationship conflict is personal, right?
Hmm.
You are an idiot, you're lazy, you're immoral.
Right. It involves ego and emotion.
Yeah.
That is bad conflict. It just shuts down thinking entirely.
And task conflict.
Task conflict is focused on the problem. This idea is stupid. The strategy won't work. This data is wrong. It's about the work, not the person.
But the problem is, we slide from task to relationship really, really fast. I say, this report has some errors, and you hear, you're incompetent.
Exactly. We take it personally, but if you want to see how to do it right, look at Pixar, specifically the making of The Incredibles.
Brad Bird, the director.
Yeah.
He was brought in to save the project, but the tech team told him his vision was impossible. The hair, the muscles, the explosions. It was too hard for the computers at the time.
So Bird did something very rethinking. He didn't hire yes men. He hired the troublemakers.
He hired the complainers.
He recruited the misfits from around the company, people who were known for nitpicking and arguing.
So he basically built a team of prosecutors.
In a way. And they fought constantly. They banged on tables, they threw paper balls. But, and this is the key, they were fighting about the characters' movement. They were fighting about the texture of the superhero suit.
They were engaged in an intense task conflict.
Because they all just wanted the movie to be great. They weren't attacking each other's character.
And that friction, it created a masterpiece.
It did. It forced them to find brand new solutions.
But let's say you're not making a movie. You're just trying to convince someone they're wrong with a bunch of facts. Grant calls this being a logic bully.
I love that term, the logic bully. We've all done this. You prepare your mental PowerPoint. You have 50 citations. You just overwhelm the other person with data.
I feel seen. I definitely do this. I think if I just give them enough facts, they have to surrender to my logic.
And does it ever work? Never. Because when you act like a logic bully, the subtext is, I am smart, you are dumb. And the other person's brain just shuts down. They put on a Kevlar vest. They aren't listening to your logic. They are defending their ego.
There's also a tactical error there too, isn't there? The whole less is more idea.
Yes. If you give someone 10 reasons why they're wrong, and 8 of them are really strong, but 2 are kind of weak, what happens?
They ignore the 8 strong ones.
They latch on to the 2 weak ones, tear them apart, and then declare your entire argument invalid.
So if you want to persuade, don't carpet bomb them. Pick your single strongest point and then just stop.
Let the silence do the work. Let them wrestle with that one strong point.
Now, for the ultimate masterclass in persuasion, we have to talk about Daryl Davis. This story,
Yeah.
honestly, it gives me chills.
It's profound. Daryl Davis is a black musician, a blues pianist, and he has a very unusual hobby. He attends Ku Klux Klan rallies.
And not to protest, he goes to talk to them.
Right. And over the years, Daryl has convinced dozens of KKK members to leave the Klan. He has a closet full of their robes that they gave him when they quit.
That sounds impossible. How does a black man talk a white supremacist out of their hate without getting killed? Or at least without screaming at them?
He uses a technique that psychologists call motivational interviewing. He doesn't attack, he doesn't preach, he just approaches them with curiosity.
So he sits down, maybe has a drink.
And just asks open-ended questions. How did you join? What does this robe mean to you? He's not being a logic bully.
Wow.
He's trying to understand their internal logic. And then, very gently, he holds up a mirror.
Can you give an example of how that conversation would go?
Sure. There's a moment in the book where a Klan member is telling Daryl that all black people have a criminal gene. He says it's in their DNA, that they're predisposed to violence.
Which is a horrific, hateful thing to say to someone's face.
It is. Most of us would flip the table. But Daryl didn't. He stayed in scientist mode.
What did he say?
He asked, okay, but I have no criminal record. I've never been arrested. I'm a musician. So, am I a mistake? How do I fit into your theory?
That is such a powerful move. He didn't say, "You're wrong." He asked a question that highlighted the flaw in their own logic.
Exactly. He planted a seed of doubt. The Klan member has to go home and wrestle with that contradiction. I believe X, but I just met Daryl and he is Y. If Daryl had screamed, the guy would have just defended his ego. But Daryl created the space for the man to convince himself.
He's collected over 200 robes doing this. That is the power of listening over debating.
It proves that arguing should be a dance, not a war. In a war, for me to win, you have to lose. In a dance, we have to move together. If you try to force your partner to move, you just step on their toes. You have to guide them.
I love that analogy. Okay, let's move to our final section. We've talked about frogs, firefighters, CEOs, and Klan members. Now let's talk about us, our lives, our identities.
One of the biggest barriers to rethinking our own lives is something called binary bias.
The tendency to split the world into just two camps, good versus bad, smart versus dumb.
Right. Our brains are lazy. They love binary choices because it saves energy. Open social media, you're either a hero or a monster. Politics, you're either a patriot or traitor.
The outline mentions the war of EQ as an example of this.
This is a classic academic binary. On one side, you have Daniel Goleman saying emotional intelligence, or EQ, is everything. It's 90% of leadership.
And on the other side,
You have someone like Jordan Peterson saying EQ is a total scam. It doesn't exist. It's just agreeableness.
and people just pick a side. I'm Team Goldman or I'm Team Peterson.
But the scientist view, the rethinker view, is to complexify. The truth is usually in the messy middle. Is EQ useful? Yes, of course, for sales, management, customer service. Is it everything? No. If you are a nuclear physicist or an accountant, IQ probably matters a lot more.
There was a fascinating experiment about this complexifying idea.
The Difficult Conversations Lab, they had people discuss hot-button issues like abortion or gun control. One group read an article that presented the issue as black versus white, just two opposing sides. The other group read an article that highlighted the complexity, all the gray areas, the nuance.
And what was the result?
The group that read the binary article just yelled at each other. They only reached a consensus 46% of the time. The group that read the complex article,
What was their number?
100% reached a consensus.
100%. That is unheard of.
Because when you admit complexity, you lower the temperature, you stop defending a fortress, and you start solving a puzzle together. You signal to the other person, I know this isn't simple, and that invites them to lower their shields.
So we need to complexify our worldviews, but we also need to rethink our own timelines. Adam Grant attacks a very sacred cow, the 10-year plan.
He says, burn your 10-year plan.
That feels reckless. I thought having a plan was responsible. Where do you see yourself in 5 years is a standard interview question.
But think about it logically. Think about who you were 10 years ago. Could that version of you have predicted the world today? Could they have predicted your current job, or TikTok, or AI, or a global pandemic?
No chance. 10 years ago, I had a totally different idea of what I even wanted.
So why do we think the current us is qualified to plan the life of the future us 10 years from now? When we lock ourselves into a plan, I will be a partner at the firm by 30, we put on blinders. We focus so hard on the plan that we might miss a detour that leads to something much better.
It also ties into the myth of passion, doesn't it? We think
Exactly.
passion is something we just find.
Like it's a hidden treasure buried in the backyard. I need to find my passion.
Yeah.
Grant argues that passion is developed, not discovered. You try things, you struggle, you get better at them, and then you get passionate. If you wait to find the passion before you start, you'll be waiting forever.
So instead of a 10-year plan, what should we do?
We should do a life checkup. Just like you go to the doctor to check your cholesterol. Once or twice a year, sit down and ask yourself some hard questions. Is my career ceiling actually a dungeon? Or if I started over today, knowing what I know now, would I still choose this path?
That is a scary question. Would I reapply for my current job?
It's scary, but it prevents you from being the boiled frog. It forces you to check the temperature of the water.
And finally, for the leaders out there listening, how do we build a culture where people actually do this? Where they can admit they're wrong without fear?
You have to normalize it. As a leader, you have to show weakness.
The roast session.
I love this idea. Leaders should hold sessions where they literally read complaints about themselves, like the mean tweets segment on Jimmy Kimmel.
So the boss's jokes in meetings are tragic. Or he micromanages the coffee machine.
Exactly. Read it out loud. Laugh at yourself. Say, okay, yeah, I can be pretty cringe sometimes. When the leader admits they're flawed, it makes it safe for everyone else to drop their heavy tools too. It signals that being right is way less important than getting better.
That is a great place to land. We've covered a massive amount of ground today.
We have.
We started with the boiling frog,
Uh,
who isn't actually stupid, just biologically wired to jump out of hot water. We ran up the hill with the smoke jumpers who died because they couldn't separate their identity from their tools.
We learned to be scientists, not preachers, prosecutors, or politicians. We climbed Mount Stupid and found superpowers in the Valley of Imposter Syndrome.
We learned that arguing is a dance, not a war, and that the only way to really persuade is to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the final challenge for everyone listening. It's a small thing. The next time you feel that spike of anger, when someone challenges your political view, or your spouse tells you you're wrong about directions, or a colleague questions your strategy, just catch yourself.
Recognize the preacher rising up. Recognize the prosecutor getting ready for battle.
And instead of digging in, just take a breath, drop the heavy tools, and ask a question instead.
Because the goal isn't to be right. The goal is to be a little less wrong than you were yesterday.
Be the frog that jumps. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Think again.